What if, suddenly, everything you gave with love was taken away from the person who matters most to you? What if something meant to be a symbol of security and happiness turned into a nightmare of abuse and manipulation? This is the story of Emily, my daughter. I gave her a house so she could have a happy beginning, but what was supposed to be a home became a prison. She believed she had found love, but she discovered she was being used in the worst possible way. In the end, she had to make a choice: continue being exploited or break free once and for all. What would you do in her place? If you enjoy stories of resilience and new beginnings, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories. When I gave my daughter a house as a wedding gift, I believed I was giving her a new beginning, a symbol of love and security, everything a mother wishes for her child. It was a spacious house, with a well-kept garden and a breathtaking view of the city. My husband and I had planned every detail, from the hand-picked furniture to the little touches that made the place feel warm and inviting. It was a gift given with love, a way to show that we would always be by her side. But I never could have imagined that this gift would become the stage for one of the greatest abuses of hospitality I have ever witnessed. My daughter, Emily, had always been independent, hardworking, and generous. Since childhood, she had shown a strong and determined spirit, earning everything through effort and dedication. She had worked from an early age, built a solid career, and always made sure to be self-sufficient. Her heart was huge, and perhaps that was exactly what made her vulnerable. When she met Jake, it seemed like she had finally found someone worthy of her dreams. He was charming, polite, and knew exactly how to win her over. In the first few months, I saw my daughter glowing, more in love than ever before. Jake seemed like the perfect partner, always helpful, attentive, and eager to make her smile. But over time, small signs began to appear. First, there was the way he constantly talked about money, mentioning that marriage is a partnership and that everything should be shared. Then came the subtle comments about how Emily spent her money, as if she needed his approval for every financial decision. And then came his family, the family, who entered Emily's life like an unstoppable storm. Margaret, the mother-in-law, was a controlling and invasive woman, always ready with an opinion on everything. She always found a way to criticize my daughter's choices, as if Emily was never good enough for her precious son. Thomas, the brother-in-law, was opportunistic, always looking for ways to benefit himself. His wife was even worse, shamelessly taking advantage of every opportunity. When they found out that Emily and Jake were receiving a house, their eyes lit up with greed. But at the time, I didn't see it. I was too busy celebrating my daughter's future, believing she had found happiness. What I didn't know was that, the moment we handed Emily that key, we weren't just giving her a home. We were opening the door to a nightmare that would take far too long to end. Emily was a mature woman, with a life shaped by challenges and resilience. She had worked hard to earn her independence and stability. She never expected anyone to solve her problems or give her anything for free. Since her youth, she had faced adversity, learned how to rise again, and developed an unshakable strength. Perhaps that was why, when she met Jake, she allowed herself to believe that she had finally found someone with whom she could share her life without having to carry the weight of the world alone. Jake was everything she had ever dreamed of, at least in the beginning. He had a charismatic way about him, knew how to make her laugh, and always seemed to understand her worries. He was attentive, patient, and often said he had never met a woman as strong and determined as she was. Emily, who had already experienced heartbreak in the past, believed that she had finally found someone worthy of walking alongside her. He seemed supportive, appreciative of her independence, and willing to build something meaningful together. But as time went on, small cracks began to appear in the perfect image of Jake. At first, they were just subtle remarks: "You work too much, you should relax more and let me take care of some things." Then came the comments about money: "You don't need to spend so much on yourself. I like simple women." Emily had always been generous, never hesitating to share, but she began to notice that Jake rarely contributed financially. He always had an excuse, a work issue, an unexpected bill, a project that didn't work out. And Emily, wanting to believe the best in him, let it slide. But nothing could have prepared Emily for the real problem, Jake's family. Margaret, his mother, was relentless. From their first meeting, it was clear that she didn't like Emily. Whenever they were together, Margaret made sure to drop passive-aggressive comments. "Wow, you really like to take charge, don't you? Women like you can be difficult for men." Or, "Jake needs a wife who knows how to take care of a home. He's always been such a special boy." Thomas, Jake's brother, was the type who always needed a favor. At first, it was small loans, but soon the requests grew larger. "Jake, you know I'm going through a tough time. Emily has the means, can't she help us out?" Thomas's wife wasn't any better. Every time she visited Emily's house, she acted as if it were her own. She would open cabinets without asking, take things without permission, and make suggestions about redecorating as if she had a say in how the space should look. The worst part was when it became clear that they weren't just visiting, they were trying to permanently establish themselves in Emily's life. At first, they would stay for extended visits. Then, they started making comments about how it would be nice to have a room of their own in the house. Before Emily even realized it, they were acting as if they already lived there. Emily began to feel suffocated. She had always been a strong woman, but she found herself trapped in an emotional siege. Every time she tried to set boundaries, Jake would make her feel guilty. "They're my family, Emily. You can't be so harsh on them." And so, little by little, the independent and confident woman she had always been began to doubt herself. Was she overreacting? Was she being selfish? Little did she know that this was only the beginning of a nightmare that would test her strength like never before. The moment Emily received the house should have been one of the happiest in her life. But before the wedding even took place, Jake's family moved in without permission, and that was when everything started to fall apart. Margaret was the first to arrive, dragging 2 large suitcases behind her and speaking as if she owned the place. As soon as she stepped inside, she looked around with disdain and said, "This place needs some changes. Where are the extra rooms for the family? I hope the master bedroom is already set up for me." Emily's eyes widened as a wave of discomfort washed over her. She tried to protest, but Jake, with a nervous smile, squeezed her hand and murmured, "Babe, my mom just needs some time to settle in. You know how she is. We don't want to be rude." Emily's heart pounded. It wasn't a question. There was no request. Margaret simply moved in, without even acknowledging that the house belonged to Emily. The next day, the nightmare escalated. Thomas arrived with his wife and children. No questions, no conversation, just the sound of suitcases being dragged through the entryway. "Since we have so much space, we'll stay here for a while," he said with a satisfied smile. Emily felt a tightness in her chest. She had never invited anyone to live there, but now it felt like she had completely lost control of her own home. Each day brought a new invasion. Margaret began giving orders as if she were the owner of the house. She changed the decor without permission, imposed absurd rules, and criticized Emily at every turn. "You should take better care of Jake," she remarked one day while watching Emily cook. "He needs a wife who is always present. Working so much isn't a married woman's role." Emily closed her eyes for a moment, trying to contain her anger. The breaking point came at dinner that night. The dining room, which had once felt so warm and welcoming, was now filled with people who treated her like a stranger in her own home. Margaret, between bites of food, made her declaration. "Now that you are part of our family, it's your responsibility to take care of the house and the meals. A good wife knows her place." Emily's stomach twisted. Her eyes searched for Jake's, hoping for some sign of support, but he just kept eating, pretending not to hear. Something inside her broke. Slowly, she rose to her feet, her gaze locked on the table. Silence fell over the room as all eyes turned to her. My place. Her voice was low, but firm. And who decided that? You? Margaret let out a condescending laugh, shaking her head. Oh, sweetheart, don't be so sensitive. This is just the natural order of things. Emily took a deep breath. She felt the sting of betrayal. The crushing disappointment of realizing that the man she loved would never stand up for her. And in that moment, she knew. She knew that the house, the dream, the relationship, it was all falling apart. That was the moment everything began to change. That night, I sat with Emily on the porch, where we used to have coffee on quieter days. But that night, tranquility was a distant concept. Her face was weary, her eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the garden. You don't have to accept this, sweetheart, I murmured, placing my hand over her cold one. This is your house. You have every right to tell them to leave. She sighed, hesitant. What if I'm overreacting? Her voice was small, as if she were trying to convince herself. Maybe it's just a phase. Maybe they just need some time to figure things out. A phase? My tone came out harsher than I intended. Emily, they took over your house before the wedding even happened. And Jake? Has he done anything to stop them? She was silent, staring at her hands. After a long pause, she murmured. He says it's just until his mother feels comfortable. That it's only a matter of time before things settle down. I took a deep breath. Sweetheart, since when do you have to sacrifice your comfort so someone else can feel at ease? And what if this phase never ends? Are you happy? Her eyes welled up with tears, but she didn't answer. She didn't need to. The next morning, Emily woke up feeling an unusual tension in the air. As she got up, she noticed an envelope on her bedside table. When she opened it, she felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. It was a detailed list. Margaret had planned every change in the house, and none of them included Emily as its rightful owner. The master bedroom will belong to the matriarch of the family. The office will be transformed into a communal space. The back bedroom will be for Thomas and his wife. Emily's hands trembled as she read each line. How dare they? How could they assume the right to take everything as if it belonged to them? A chill ran down her spine. She had lost control of her own home. They had taken everything. And Jake? Jake did nothing. When he walked into the room, he found Emily sitting on the bed, gripping the list with shaky hands. Babe, what's wrong? He asked, his voice laced with the false calm she was beginning to see through. She held up the paper. What is this, Jake? He hesitated. Scratched the back of his neck. My mom just made a few suggestions. Nothing is set in stone yet. Suggestions? Her voice came out bitter. She decided who gets my bedroom. My office. And you think this is what? A draft of ideas. Jake sighed, frustrated. Emily, why do you always react this way? My family just wants to feel at home. They've been through so much. Emily felt a surge of anger rise in her chest. No. What you mean is that I have to go through hardships so that your family can be comfortable. But guess what? This house was a gift from my parents. And I'm not going to let them take it away from me. Jake fell silent, and for a moment, Emily saw something in his eyes she had never noticed before, a fear disguised as indignation. He knew she was waking up. That's when Emily realized, this was not the life she wanted. But how could she escape without losing everything? How could she confront Jake without letting him manipulate her? How could she put an end to something that was becoming more unbearable by the day? She needed a plan. And she needed to act fast. Emily knew she couldn't confront Jake and his family without a plan. So, she decided to pretend she was going along with everything, but inside, she was already in motion. While Margaret continued to give orders, Thomas settled in as if he owned the place, and Jake remained in his bubble of denial. Emily began to take action. She opened a separate bank account and started saving money. She took on freelance jobs, sold clothes she no longer wore, and began building an emergency fund. In the quiet nights, while everyone slept, Emily read articles on property rights and meticulously planned her next steps. She knew the house was legally hers, but she wanted to make sure nothing could be contested. One day, she felt the need to share her plan with someone she truly trusted. And who better than her mother? During a discreet lunch at a secluded cafe, Emily looked into her mother's eyes and took a deep breath. "I can't take it anymore. I feel suffocated in my own home," she confessed, her voice trembling. Her mother held her hands tightly. "My dear, I know this has been difficult. But you don't have to go through this alone. What do you plan to do?" Emily exhaled slowly. "I've already consulted a lawyer. The house is in my name, and they have no rights to it. I'm saving money and making sure that when the time comes, no one can challenge my decision. I'm going to evict them. And when that happens, there will be no turning back." Her mother's eyes welled up with tears, not of sadness, but of pride. Emily was no longer the insecure woman who once allowed herself to be manipulated. "You're doing the right thing. I've always known my daughter was strong. She was just waiting for the right moment to remember that." But the transformation wasn't just external. Emily realized that the submission she had maintained to preserve her relationship had been slowly destroying her. The strong and independent woman she once was had been suffocated, trapped by an invisible fear imposed by Jake's family. That had to change. She began to rediscover herself. She enrolled in an online business management course, something she had always wanted to learn. She sought a better job and, with her talent and dedication, landed a great opportunity. She started going out more, reconnecting with old friends she had drifted away from to accommodate that suffocating relationship. And as she grew stronger, she saw more clearly who Jake truly was. He never supported her. He never had. When she mentioned her new job, he frowned. When she said she was studying something new, he sighed impatiently. "You've been so busy lately," he said one night, his voice laced with fake concern. "It feels like you're trying to avoid me." Emily smiled at him. But it wasn't a smile of fear or submission. It was the smile of someone who already knew the truth. In the following months, everything changed. She no longer asked for permission. She no longer sought his approval. And Jake noticed. "You're different," he commented one day, furrowing his brow. "What's happening to you?" Emily simply shrugged. "Nothing, Jake. I'm just remembering who I am." The right moment to act arrived on a cold Saturday night. Everyone was gathered in the living room, watching TV as if they truly owned the house. Emily walked in and stood before them. "We need to talk," she said, her voice firm. Jake narrowed his eyes. "About what?" Margaret asked, her usual arrogance in full display. Emily pulled an envelope from her bag and tossed it onto the table. "About your move." Margaret laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that this house doesn't belong to you. It never did. And now, you're leaving." The silence that followed was heavy, almost tangible. "You've lost your mind." Jake stood up, his eyes wide. "No, Jake. I've finally woken up," Emily replied, crossing her arms. "This house was a gift from my parents to me. And I allowed you all to take advantage of it. But now, it's over. You have 1 week to leave." Margaret stood up abruptly, slamming her hands on the table. "You're being ridiculous. How can you do this to your own family?" Emily let out a dry chuckle. "You were never my family. You just took advantage of me because I allowed it. But that ends now. Jake stepped closer, trying to use his usual tone, the one that always made her give in. Babe, let's talk this through calmly. You can't just throw us out like this. Emily looked into his eyes. There was a time when she would have hesitated, when she would have felt guilty, convinced herself she was overreacting. But not anymore. You're wrong, Jake. Yes, I can. She walked to the door and opened it. Start packing. You have 1 week. If you don't leave, my lawyer will handle it. Margaret erupted into a storm of insults. Thomas said this was absurd. Jake tried to appeal to her emotions. But nothing worked anymore. Emily had returned to herself. And no one would make her step back. A week later, when the last suitcase was dragged out of the house, Emily stood at the doorway, watching. Jake turned to her one last time, expecting some hesitation, some sign of regret. But all he saw was a woman standing tall, secure, strong, closing the door behind them. And just like that, Emily reclaimed her life. Not with shouting or revenge. But with something far more powerful. With freedom. For a while, Jake tried to win Emily back. First, there were the short, remorseful messages. Emily, I know I messed up. Can we talk? Then came the late-night phone calls, attempts to dramatize his own suffering. Are you really going to throw away everything we had? I know I can change. One day, he even showed up at her workplace, holding a cheap bouquet of flowers and wearing a carefully practiced look of sorrow. I love you, Emily. I know I ruined everything, but we can fix this. Give me another chance. She looked at him, memories of the past pressing against her heart. But what she felt wasn't longing. It was liberation. You love what I represented for you, Jake, she said, her voice calm. You love the comfort I provided, the security of having someone who always saved you. But you never really loved me. Jake tried to take her hand, but Emily pulled away. Go back to your life, Jake. I'm already living mine. His expression shifted. First, shock. Then, anger. You've become cold. You were never like this. He spat. Emily raised an eyebrow, her patience running thin. No, Jake. I just stopped accepting crumbs and calling it love. She turned and walked into her office, leaving him standing there, alone with his empty excuses. Weeks later, Jake and his family's world came crashing down. Thomas lost his job. His arrogance and laziness had finally caught up with him, costing him his position. His wife, who had once mocked Emily, was now forced to take on temporary jobs to support their children. As for Margaret, she was evicted from the home she had been renting after failing to pay rent. She now lives with distant relatives who can barely tolerate her, exhausted by her controlling nature, arrogance, and relentless need to impose her will on everyone around her. Today, I see my daughter living her best life. Her home, once a battlefield, has become a sanctuary of peace and harmony. Every corner now carries her personal touch, colors that make her feel alive, furniture she carefully selected, and, most importantly, silence. Not the silence of loneliness, but the silence of freedom. After so much suffering, she now has time for herself and, more than that, time for me. We share simple yet precious moments, the kind that had once been overshadowed by those who only drained her energy. Our mornings are once again filled with light-hearted conversations and genuine laughter, without the weight of manipulation and abuse looming over us. Watching Emily finally free is the greatest relief I have ever felt. Knowing that no one is draining her happiness fills me with gratitude. Her home is hers and hers alone. There are no more commands being issued, no unwanted footsteps echoing through the halls. She no longer has to lower her head or measure her words to avoid conflict. The peace she feels is indescribable, and as a mother, there is nothing more comforting than seeing my daughter safe and in control of her own life. The emptiness she once feared never arrived. On the contrary, each day is a new opportunity to reconnect with herself. I see in her the strength she always had but had, for a time, forgotten. She started a small business, dedicated herself to projects that truly bring her joy, and surrounded herself with people who genuinely support her. Each morning, as she wakes up, she takes a deep breath and smiles. The air feels lighter. The sun seems brighter. She has won. And I, as her mother, know I couldn't be prouder. And her greatest revenge wasn't shouting, arguing, or retaliating. It was simply moving forward without looking back. Because, in the end, the best response to those who underestimate us is success. And Emily's greatest victory was realizing she never needed Jake to be happy. True freedom comes when we learn to say no to what harms us and yes to ourselves. If you've ever been through something like this, know that you deserve more. You deserve respect, happiness, and freedom. And if you haven't made your decision yet, remember, the power to change your life is in your hands. You don't need to wait for anyone to be happy. And what about you? Have you ever freed yourself from something or someone who drained your energy? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might inspire someone to take the first step. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more stories of overcoming obstacles and new beginnings. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, send them this video. You might be the light on their path today.